Hey guys, what's up? It's Biscuit Horror Reviews. I'm here with a video, kind of a freeform discussion type video, talking about a handful of horror films that I've seen that are directed by, I'm gonna say teenagers, pretty much, and teenager, at least by definition for this video, is between the ages of 10 to like 20. I'm just gonna go with the actual teen years for it. Anyway, I kind of wanted to, do this because I think it's an interesting subject, because you often hear thrown around a lot, especially when people are talking about like really low budget independent movies. They say, oh, this feels like something that a bunch of kids shot in their backyard. And I genuinely tried to think about horror films that I have seen personally that I could compile into a list. And originally my definition was like, the cutoff was like 18. And then I realized that, if I did that, there's a couple titles that I really want to mention, because they're extremely, great examples of very humble beginnings. Or at least very interesting beginnings of careers. So I figured I'd just go with the 10 to 20 kind of, limit. I mean, hell, if I could find some directed by like 9-year-olds, I would fucking throw that in there. But as somebody who has tried to make a movie myself, and who did it when they were 20, I mean, I didn't make some spectacular off the wall gore slasher flick. I made a very simple, slow burn, atmospheric. I made a psychological horror film, something that is maybe not easy to shoot, but definitely easy compared to some of the films I'm going to be talking about. So I really just kind of want to say that filmmaking is not easy. It is not an easy undertaking, and I would say that even if a film that a young person creates is not even necessarily good on any level, I think it's good to support them, because they could go on to make something really, really great. So I'm actually gonna sort these titles from like the best quality to the the highest quality to the lowest quality, and I'm gonna give you just rundown of the plot, my thoughts on it, some information about it, and that is gonna be it, and then we're gonna just have a good time. So let's just get this thing started. Alright, starting off as the most technically competent film on the list, and a film that I think you could probably show to an average horror fan, and they might not like it necessarily, but they would definitely think it was pretty decent, especially for a very low budget movie, and especially after you know the age of the director. I'm talking about Carver from 2015. This film kind of made some waves in the horror community, mainly because the director, Emily DePrimo, I believe her name is, was 13 when she directed this film, which is absolutely crazy to me, that somebody who was 13 years old wrote and directed this film, and it's actually like pretty well made, all things considered. It's essentially, in terms of plot, your average slasher film setup, specifically Prom Night, with it being about a bunch of people being targeted after something they did when they were younger, on the anniversary of something they did when they were younger, and it comes back to haunt them, and there's a killer targeting them, and who could the killer be? There's some pretty disturbing twists to this film. I saw this one last year, finally got around to it last year. There's some really disturbing twists and turns to this film. It's not amazingly acted, and you're going to hear me say this about all these movies. These movies are not good, necessarily, like, none of them are. This is the only one that I would honestly recommend to the average person. And that's just because I'd like to see the reaction to it when, after finishing it, I tell them, oh yeah, this was directed by a 13-year-old, by the way. Because I think just about anybody would be impressed with this film. And yeah, the first title is Carver from 2015. I should also mention that Carver currently is available on Amazon Prime streaming in the U.S. If you really want to check it out, and I do recommend you give it a watch. Next is BC Butcher from 2016. This one is directed by a girl named Kansas Bowling. She was 17 when she directed this movie, which, again, as somebody who didn't make really their first feature until they were 20, this is a hell of an effort for a directorial debut, at least the feature directorial debut. And Carver was also a directorial debut. This one is a little less on the good side of things. It's distributed by Troma, and they heavily advertised this film when it came out. I remember their YouTube channel posted like so many trailers and clips and interviews with Kansas Bowling, and you know, that's cool and everything, that's great, but they advertised the hell out of this when it came out. As a result, people didn't seem to like it, and that's completely understandable. The film BC Butcher from 2016 is essentially a slasher film set in prehistoric times, which is a really interesting, really original concept. And I think that, you know, this film, while not amazing, could be something really, really special in terms of it being kind of a weird, absurdist dark comedy. If revisited in later years, or not revisited, but remade. You know, I think this concept could be something that could really provide a lot of material to work with when it comes to, you know, creative kills and everything. But it's basically just about a group of cave women who are, you know, wearing kind of the classic, like, caveman comedy, like the Ringo Starr caveman comedy film Caveman from, like, the mid-'80s, I think. Kind of just the classic wardrobe for caveman comedy films, which is just kind of like a bikini set, but it's like, you know, animal pelts. Classic fucking setup. It feels kind of like a 60s B movie at times. There's some decent gore in the film from what I remember. The gore, I should mention, in Carver is also pretty good. But in here, you know, interesting. The guy playing the killer is really good. Funny enough, his name is Dwayne Johnson, not Dwayne The Rock Johnson, mind you. He just happens to have the same first and last name, which is absolutely amazing, because that means they can literally put on the cover of their movie, hey, we got Dwayne Johnson in our movie, and people will, you know, check it out for that. But he does a good job. Like I said, a bunch of cave women are targeted by a deformed, murderous Neanderthal. And it's only like 51 minutes. It's a good time, especially if you are, you know, looking for something that's quick and easy. And again, I think this is a movie you could show to somebody, and they'd probably say, that isn't very good. And then you tell them, oh, well, this was directed by, you know, somebody who was 17 years old. And then you're like, okay, well, that actually, you know, makes it a bit more understandable. And that will definitely, I think, make the film a little more impressive to some people. And now we are getting into shot-on-video territory. Now, to be fair, I believe that shooting a film on video is a completely viable way to shoot a film, whether it be for budgetary reasons or style reasons. I think you could shoot a movie on VHS and it can legitimately be great movies. Prime example is the film Video Violence. I feel like if that movie would have been shot on like 8mm, 16mm, it would probably be a cult classic that a lot of people have seen. Don't get me wrong, video violence is kind of well known, especially if you are in cult film circles. But it's not a well known movie among the mainstream. It's not as well known as something like uh, My Bloody Valentine, for example. And that being said, we're on to our first foreign film, and also our first shot on video film, and also a film that I personally really, really adore. I'm talking about Olaf Ittenbach's Black Past, which I have the Massacre Video VHS release of, which is very, very nice. Um, Black Past. This is one of the first shot on video films I ever saw when I was in high school, and it's really stuck with me. Even though it's shot on video, I'd argue that there are elements of it that really, really shine through. It has a really interesting atmosphere to it, lots of really great gore effects. It's creepy. It's got some cool body horror moments, cool gore, nice surreal moments to it, that nice surreal scenes that I can really, really appreciate, especially, again, considering the format, budget, and the fact that this was shot by Olaf Ittenbach when he was about 20 years old, 19 to 20 years old-ish, somewhere in there. But yeah, Black Past is basically a film about this family moving into a house, and the eldest son, Tommy, played by the director Olaf. This is his first feature film as well. He finds a mirror in the attic that is probably cursed, probably has a demon in it or something like that, and it starts to cause changes within him mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, etc., etc. And some pretty crazy, surreal, weird, fucked up stuff happens. I also want to give a solid recommendation to Olaf Ittenbach's follow-up film, The Burning Moon, which is an anthology film he did 3 years after this one. This one came out in 1989, which is also a legitimately pretty good film, especially when you look at it from the perspective of this is a super, super low budget movie. The next two I'm going to talk about together because they're both directed by the same people, both around the same time. I'm talking about two films by the Polonia brothers, who were two twin brother filmmakers who have been kind of, part of the cult horror scene for quite a while. They started in the 80s shooting on VHS, super low budget, kind of weird, gory horror films. They went on to do some other interesting stuff, but I think their early stuff is probably their best. First, I want to talk about their first big release, and that is, of course, Splatter Farm, which I have the DVD, VHS, big box, which is really nice. But Splatter Farm is pretty interesting, gory little flick. I think it is from 1986. Double checking. Yeah. Yeah, it's shot in 1986, released in 1987. Around the time the Polonia brothers were around 18 years old. And it's a slasher splatter title that's basically about these two brothers who go visit their aunt, who lives on a farm, and it turns out the handyman that she's living with, is murdering people and storing their corpses in the barn. It's gory, it's kind of stupid, splattery, offensive. There's elements of homosexuality and kind of and incest. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in this movie. Super, super enjoyable though, especially if you like low budget splatter trash. The other one I want to mention by the Polonias is what is considered one of their first films, and it was thought to be lost for quite a while. And it is called Hallucinations, which is basically three brothers left home alone, and they start to have weird hallucinations of monsters, demons, killers, and it's just kind of a massive shot on VHS clusterfuck of interesting, weird ideas. There's cool gore scenes and, just lots of interesting stuff going on. It's legitimately campy and silly, but also has kind of an atmosphere to it, with an almost with this kind of surreal shit that it has going on. It's kind of really unintentionally creepy as hell, and I can really respect that as well. That one was shot in '85, but that is, yeah, I think that's it for those two titles. I'm just going to combine those into one because they're both directed by the Polonias. I'd also like to give a solid recommendation to their very first film, Church of the Damned, which was released on Blu-ray by Sub Rosa, with their voodoo film from the late 90s, Bad Magic, which is absolutely amazing. But Church of the Damned, fun little splattery flick. Not too amazing in my opinion, but definitely humble beginnings, especially when you compare Church of the Damned to Splatter Farm. It's like night and day in terms of comparisons. And we got to return back to Germany for just one last time, I think, yes, for the classic, you know it, you love it, everybody loves this one, Violent Shit, directed by Andreas Schnaas, whose name I'm probably mispronouncing. He shot this one. This movie was released in '89. It was shot in '88 on a rented video camera for, I think, about like $700, something like that. I think it might have been 200. I know it's super low budget. That being said, Violent Shit was kind of made for the same reasons that Black Past was made. It was essentially made as a result of the German government banning all kinds of horror films, and a bunch of splatterpunk teenagers just thought to themselves, how about we just make our own? And this resulted in a huge wave of low-budget gore films from Germany. And, you know, if Olaf Ittenbach is the fucking Orson Welles of German splatter horror, then Andreas Schnaas is like the Ed Wood. His movies are not respected, not well liked at all. In fact, I personally don't even really like the first Violent Shit too much. Like I kind of like it now, you know, as kind of background noise, but I honestly don't think it's good, like at all. But the gore effects, honestly, as bad as they are sometimes, are still pretty fucking impressive considering the budget. Violent Shit. Jesus, is that a fucking great title. Violent Shit is basically a movie about a young boy comes home after staying out too late and his mom gets mad at him. He murders his mother, ends up in an institution, and when they are transporting him through the woods to another institution, he escapes and goes on a killing spree in the woods and just absolutely slaughters everybody he comes across, and it's, you know, really dumb and ridiculous. There's fucking stolen copyrighted music that's used in the original cut of the film that was traded around on VHS. Really, this movie's just god-awful, but it's got some cool kind of surreal moments, like where Carl the Butcher, the main character, also known as K the Butcher Shitter, ends up seeing, Carl the Butcher Jr. ends up seeing his father, who is like a demon, in a hallucination scene, and that's kind of interesting. There's the ending scene, which I kind of don't want to spoil. I'll just say that out of nowhere, Carl finds Jesus crucified in the woods, and something happens as a result of it. Really, you know, Violent Shit is bad, but like, you kind of have to respect the audacity of somebody to go against the government like that, and also to go against the government and just be self-aware and say, hey, let's just let people know our movie is fucking shit. Okay, now some people, probably nobody, because I you know, fucking nobody actually cares, might disagree with my placement of the next two movies, considering that violent shit is so ungodly awful. However, I want to say that, like, the gore effects at least keep it kind of impressive for the super low budget. These next two films, the gore effects are absolutely awful, although they're about the same on a technical level with violent shit. They both have more plot than violent shit, though, so maybe I'm misplacing these two. But the next one is Creep, A Tale of Murder and Madness from 2015, I believe. This one's shot by I think they're a couple of teenagers. I can't confirm that 100% because I don't know their year of birth, but they're both in the movie. They both, like, pretty much star in the movie, so I'm going to assume, based on the fact that they look fairly young, that they are young. Either way, this is a movie about two friends, two teenage friends, who go into the woods searching for the corpse of a missing person, and one of them ends up being killed by the person, by the person who is responsible for this person going missing and believing to have been murdered. And the remaining guy goes and attempts to, find and expose and go after the killer himself, for revenge for his friend. This movie is most definitely shot by teenagers. You can tell in how it looks, and it feels like a home movie, most definitely. Out of all of these, this one probably feels the most like a home movie. And that being said, you see the two, like, main characters. They're wearing T-shirts of, like, Lucio Fulci's The Beyond and stuff, so you can tell that they have a love for this kind of stuff. There's a part where the killer is watching fucking Death Scenes 2 on VHS. Like, you can tell that these two guys have a respect and a love for low-budget exploitation cult cinema, and I can completely respect that, 100%, because I was one of those kids growing up. I was one of those kids fucking not too long ago. I'm pretty sure these guys were between, I want to say, like, probably 16 to 18 years old when they made this movie. It's one of the least memorable in this video. However, I do kind of like it. I have not seen it in a bit. I might have to revisit it. I do own it on DVD, so, let that say what it will. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about Creep. There's one scene of gore that is kind of convincing, and the rest of it is, like, really, really bad. So yeah, that's it, I think. This video's falling apart. Alright, and finally, the last movie I want to talk about is a film from 2015, directed by Alex DeSanti, I believe the name is. I cannot remember off the top of my head. I know the first name is Alex, though. Basically, this is a film shot by a Canadian teenager, I believe, about a teenage girl who runs a business where she makes meat pies. She's a psychopath, she's a killer, she kills people, makes meat pies out of them, and with the help of her brother, she, goes after people, specific people in town, kills them, grinds them up, sells them as meat pies. Again, this one very similar to Creep, is one of those movies where you can tell just by looking at it, this is a home movie. This is super bad. It's not good in the slightest. There's not even really any impressive gore effects to it. That being said, it's got a strange kind of hypnotic quality to it, most definitely. Kind of comparable to, like, Death Nurse, for example. Jesus fucking Christ. If you've seen Death Nurse, you probably know what I'm talking about, but if you haven't, Death Nurse is a really awful shot-on-video film from the 80s that, to a normal person, is, like, the most boring movie ever, but to somebody who appreciates weird, super awful shit like Manos: The Hands of Fate. It's legitimately pretty interesting and entertaining in terms of its like perceived need to focus on things that aren't interesting and then not focus on things that are interesting. And this movie's kind of similar to that. It's just kind of an average slasher flick. I think it runs for only about 50 minutes, which you know, let that say what it will. I do know I can't I don't know if this one is on Amazon Prime anymore, but that is where I originally saw it. You could probably find this film somewhere. I know that it's available with some of the director's other movies in like a 4-movie pack on Amazon for like $5 on Blu-ray or DVD, which I will probably buy that because Meat Pie Massacre, while really bad, is definitely a noble effort and one I could recommend to people who maybe aren't looking for a good horror film or even a watchable one, but maybe if you're genuinely interested based on the title. That's why I saw it, because the title is fucking great. Um, but I don't know, you could be somebody who's writing a book on horror films made by teenagers, or you could just be somebody like me who, just watches all kinds of garbage films. Either way, as the video comes to a close, I just want to say that we should most definitely support these young people who want to create art, who want to create genre films, because really, anybody can make a movie. That's fact at this point. But not everybody can make a good movie. Not everybody can make an okay movie. Not everybody can even make a bad movie. Or a god-awful movie. It's an extremely rough art form to work with. It's an extremely demanding one. And I think making a movie within the art form, even if you're just compiling together, like backwards footage from random public domain films into a random order and just calling it art, I believe that you have made something there. You've done something, and that's admirable. That's respectable. And as the saying goes, the children are our future. And honestly, we should support their creative endeavors. I'm sure that fucking The Carver got made because somebody believed in Emily DePrimo's idea for this slasher film, not just because I kind of doubt she funded it out of pocket. I'm sure that she got the budget from somewhere. Somebody believed in her, and now she has a movie that you can watch readily available on Amazon Prime, and that's really fucking amazing. It's great. With that said, that's it for this one, guys. This is Biscuit Boo Horror Reviews, signing off. Peace.